Well, hello there, my fine friends. Mr. E here, and today I'll be tackling quite a daunting task indeed, which is ranking all of the ranged weapons in Darktide, circa early 2026. Now, as compared to last time around in fall of 2025, this list will include the exclusive ranged weapons for the Hive Scum, and it will include discussions of how some of these weapons work with the new Hive Scum class. Plus, of course, I've been constantly reevaluating and reconsidering some of my rankings from the past, so expect to see a few changes in here, but my overall goal is to provide you with a list of the best options should you choose to use your ranged weapon on any given class. With that being said, let's go ahead here and describe what the tiers are that I'm going to be using to rank and evaluate these classes, these weapons today. Starting down at the bottom with quite a self-descriptive talent tier here, good on Hive Scum only. The Hive Scum is a very unique class. As of time of posting, Hive Scum currently has literally infinite ammo with a talent called Pickpocket. However, if that at some point in the near future is nerfed, I might have to reevaluate a little bit. Nevertheless, he does still have a fine ability called Desperado, which can give him effectively infinite ammo. Both of those together can enable some weapons that otherwise would be limited by their ammo consumption to be quite good, and so a few of those weapons are saved from being put into these lower tiers and instead will slot themselves into being quite solid picks on the Hive Scum. That is the purpose of this tier here, because he operates so differently with ranged weapons than a lot of other classes do. Then we move up to useless trash. I think this should be self-descriptive here. The kind of disappointing thing about ranged weapons is that for the vast majority of them, there is almost nothing that can act as a saving grace. You either have to have the damage and use minimal or light resources, or you don't, right? If you are using too much ammo to produce too little results, you're just going to be a bad weapon. There's no two ways about it. So that is the ultimate test for most of these weapons, is how much damage can they put on how many targets? Do they have the capability of dealing with armored targets or multi-target or whatever it might be? And are they going to be ammo efficient? Are they going to be resource efficient in doing that? And then we have above that a fine waste of ammo. These weapons are what I would consider a little bit less than optimal. These are weapons that they might be okay to use, but I think there are just better contenders out there. They are usually lacking in damage throughput, damage per second. You could just look to a very simple sort of similar weapon and get a better result. And I want to do my best to steer you in those directions, away from weapons like this and definitely away from weapons in the useless trash tier. Now, notably, we have weapons in this list that do not use ammo. The staves would be what I'm talking about here. And you could, of course, have a staff in a tier like this. It would just not be a fine waste of ammo. It would be a fine waste of time in that sense. Could you be getting more damage done by spending a similar amount of peril, by spending a similar amount of time on a different staff? And the answer for a staff in this tier would be absolutely yes. There are ones that are better than anything down here. Foreshadowing, I suppose. Now, once we reach this next tier, a fine backup, I want to make a clear declarative statement. Everything from a fine backup up on the tier list is considered a good weapon, because this fine backup tier, what this means to me, and should mean to you by extension, is that these weapons are actually good. They are very good as a backup on the class, whatever class you might have. So for example, you might have a weapon such as I'm not going to put it there necessarily, but like the bolt pistol, right? A bolt pistol is a fine backup weapon. It is not necessarily the weapon you would make your entire build around, but it is a solid enough weapon that it would end up being a good sidearm, especially if you're on a class that is not primarily a range focus. So like the RBDs, right? An RBD shotgun would be a great selection for this tier. Now, is there any better secondary for the RBDs than this weapon? Maybe not, right? The RBD shotguns are very, very strong, so they would definitely be some of the best options you can have in that class, and that's why I'm saying everything from here and up is really, really good. It's just that these are backup weapons. They are not your main bread and butter damage dealers. They're not the focus of your build. Compare that to the next tier up, where we start to get really, really powerful. Build around this tier. These are the weapons that are build defining. They are either the primary source of dealing damage in their build, or they are such an essential source of dealing damage, dealing with certain types of targets, dealing with whole hordes or whatever it might be, that you very much consider this when you're making your build. A fine backup would be referring to a weapon that is just, hey, well, let's just slot it in the secondary slot. It's going to pull me out of a, I can kill trappers and stuff when I'm in a pinch. Build around this is like easily 50% of your consideration is, I really need to have this as my range weapon here. It is going to be pulling a lot of weight. And then finally, the who balanced this tier. These weapons are just absurdly powerful in one way or another. Resource consumption is super low, damage is super high, the amount of targets and the type of targets that it can deal with is just not not a limiting factor at all. These weapons are needing some changes, to say the least, right? These weapons are seriously not exactly playing by the rules that everybody else is, and I think that overall, just thinking about these tiers when I'm cogitating on it right now before I start this list, because I do this kind of on the fly, I'm only thinking there's a few in this tier currently, and that to me says that we're in a relatively good balanced state. If most stuff could be in these tiers right here, we would be solid. The problem, I think, for the game is that a few are lingering up here, where we have these weapons that are super, super incredibly powerful compared to everything else, and they're like leagues ahead. But with that being said, I think we have everything we need to do to get started. Of course, there's one thing you should do before we get started here, and that's if you enjoy this sort of ranking, if you enjoy learning more about Darktide, hearing more about Darktide, hearing me talk about whatever it might be, you should subscribe. I'm almost at Warhammer 40k subscribers. In fact, by the time this video is out, I might even be at Warhammer 40k subscribers, but you can choose to become part of the Mystery Machine before then. You could also become a member as well. Just, floating it out there. Anyway, let's go ahead and begin here. Let's start with some relatively easy peasy stuff. I want to start with a very much a bland standard weapon in the game, and that is the infantry las guns down here. These infantry las guns are sort of the mainstay weapon in Darktide. They are the weapon that I think all of the humanoid classes start with, or at least the veteran does. And does the psyker start with it? The veteran does anyway. These weapons are what Darktide was sort of designed around in the early stages of its conception. Everyone was a guardsman, everyone had a las rifle, we were just shooting in dark hallways, killing off horde and stuff like that. And at the time, especially in the early patches, pre-patch 13 or so, these were some of the best weapons of the game, because they had high enough damage that they could pick off gunners and stuff in 1 or 2 shots, and they had sights, which was a big deal back then, because mods didn't exist to add sights at the time, so they were very good. However, time has not been favorable to these weapons. They simply do not hold up to the DPS test. You can put way more damage on any given target with really any other weapon, and the only thing they have going for them in any way, shape, or form is that they are las weapons, and therefore the veteran's shock trooper talent, which gives him free ammo on crit, can generate free ammo for you. However, if you are attempting to go for a sniping style veteran who's conserving a lot of ammo and is going for a las type weapon, you definitely have a better option in the Hellbore, which we'll get to in a little while. These, I think, would fit pretty squarely into the fine waste of ammo tier. They aren't absolutely garbage tier. You could use them in your backup slot, but yeah, they are certainly way behind the power curve as it currently exists in the game. They serve a purpose, they are accurate, and they conserve ammo. They have a very large ammo capacity, so you aren't exactly sitting on a dead weapon in your secondary here, but they're getting very close to it, especially with the direction that Darktide is going, with having more and more enemies and more enemies that are immune to the paltry damage that they deal at this point. So yeah, unfortunate for them, but that is where they should live for now. Let's also talk about another set of 3 weapons, family of weapons here, the combat shotguns. Now, these combat shotguns got a very juicy buff back in the fall of 2025. They got buffs to their direct damage, they got buffs to their ammo counts, and also to their movement speed. So these weapons are some of the fastest in the game now. You can just zip along. They have the what is called ninja move set, or ninja movement speed bracket in the game's files, and so you can move at up to 0.8 additional sprint speed while these are equipped. This makes them a great complement to a lot of slow moving weapons in the game. For instance, your relic blades and your thunder hammers and that sort for Zealot. you can use this as your mobility weapon, and then you can swap back to your melee when you get into the thick of things. In addition, they have fairly good ammo consumption. They honestly are quite efficient, and they have pretty decent critical multipliers as well. So it's not too hard at short to medium range to hit a headshot and deal a pretty considerable amount of damage. Of course, these things suck dick at like killing anything carapace armored, but for your general light elite usages, hey, you need to pop a single gunner, maybe you need to knock off a trapper or a dog that's coming in, they're very, very good for that. And one of the things that also makes them a good pick as a fine backup here, which is where I'll put all three of these weapons, is that they have a high stagger potential. Just as in real life, the shotgun is sort of favored as a close quarters defender weapon because it has high stopping power, meaning when you shoot the target, they might not die immediately, but they're not going to be able to shoot you back because the trapper, instead of being able to get the trapper shot off, is now staggered and is knocked back out of their animation, and then you can finish them off with the second shot. The thing that's holding these weapons back is, of course, the loading animation takes forever, and there's tons of types of armor that they are just completely ineffectual against. They just take far too long, and they don't deal enough damage per second. However, they are quick to equip in a pinch, they have that nice movement speed buff, and they can kill the light targets you need to kill if you are primarily a melee user. You could do worse than using these as a backup. If you want to know what my favorite one is, I really like this one right here. I cannot remember, this is the Agrippina or whatever it's called, but this is the slug shooter. This has a weapon special, it shoots a like precision shot slug. That's quite nice. You could also go with the fire shotgun up here, which used to be called the Cantrail, but the fire is also quite good. But all three have their merits, and they roughly sort of standardized performance. I think they do just fine in that tier there. Let's do an Ogryn weapon next. Let's do another family of three. Let's talk about the heavy single stubbers. We have in order of caliber up here. Highest caliber goes first. I cannot remember. I think this is the Atlas is the heaviest caliber. And then, you know, maybe about 7,000 hours played, I'll remember the mark names of these things. But the heaviest caliber, the middlest of the bunch. And then we have the sort of DMR style, I'll say, air quotes, low caliber option all the way over here on the right. Now, of these three, this one here on the right has a different blessing set, as I remember, than the other two do. These two here have a lot of emphasis on headshots and critical hits, so you can actually get things like Headhunter on here, or what's the one, I can't never remember the name of that blessing, where you aim down the sights and you gain stack and critical chance. So these are real sniper weapons. The problem being that the Ogryn isn't exactly built for that sort of engagement, and he doesn't have a whole lot of synergy necessarily with it. The Ogryn really lacks in his kit a weapon to quickly draw and dispatch threatening targets that are encroaching on him, like a trapper, something like that. And this weapon, or at least these two marks of this weapon, don't really fit that role. These are much more for sniping long distance targets, which can be fine, but again, I think you could rely on other teammates to do that a little bit better. The best one out of these three, in my approximation, is our friend the light caliber heavy stubber here. That's a little bit of a contradictory statement, but this thing is a little bit faster to equip, and it has a high stagger potential as well as a pretty fast rate of fire. So you see a dog or a trapper coming in, you can whip this thing out in a relatively quick amount of time and then blast a couple rounds into them, and while they can be killed but instantly by like a single headshot, but if you don't, you're definitely going to wing them and knock them back, knock them out of their animations, which is good as well. I'll rank all these things as a fine backup. I think they're good secondaries on the Ogryn. Oops, that wasn't good there. I think this one is definitely the best because the Ogryn needs that close range, quick defense, and that's pretty good for him. I don't think that they're the best options for the Ogryn as a secondary. He's got fairly few good options in the secondary slot right now, but these things, they do okay, right? They can serve to pick off long-range threatening targets, which not a lot of the Ogryn's other weapons do really well at all. So they do have kind of a unique role there. So I think they're fine as backup weapons, but they don't really jump out as anything super special. Now, I want to talk about a weapon that I think is very special, and that is the las pistol, the heavy las pistol. There's two marks, and they are always separated on my tier list for some reason. There we go. There's two marks, the Mark II and the Mark X. The Mark II is the faster firing of the variant. The Mark X is the slower firing of the variant. The Mark II is an exceptional weapon. This is one, if not like the best generally available sidearm in the game. So Psychers, Veterans, and Zealots all have it. I don't believe Arbites has access to this, but those 3 classes can all use this as a sidearm, and I think it is just easily among their best, especially the Veteran, who can literally take this weapon and go to close to 100% critical chance, which means he can go infinite ammo. If you want, you can check out my infinite las pistol build. This thing has, honestly, kind of absurd damage ratios. I have no idea how it was balanced and in what way, shape, or form it was justified to have a 4 to 5x multiplier on critical headshot. On a weapon with 0 recoil that has a sight and like infinite range. So yeah, this thing just absolutely slaps. It has insane boss DPS. It'll pop. Most non-carapace enemies die in 1 to 2 hits. It's just really, really good. And it happens to also share that movement speed bracket with your combat shotguns here, so you are super, super fast while using it. So fast and effective, in fact, that it becomes hard to justify why you would ever use one of these shotguns over this pistol, which has a much quicker reload time, much longer range, much better boss damage, much higher precision. It just stands above the heads and shoulders above every other sidearm in the game, and it is potential to be built around as well as with the Veteran build. You can also use it. I use it for the sidearm in my melee Psyker build. It's just perfect synergy with everything Scryer's Gaze typed. Yeah, crits go a mile on this thing. So absolutely disgusting, beautiful weapon. Now, in comparison, the Mark 10 here, the slower firing variant, it is a fine backup. However, the slower fire rate does not do it any services. The thing that you really want about this weapon is to really abuse the fact that faster fire rate is like disproportionately good, right? Firing fast, normally on weapons, firing really, really fast throws you off your target and means you miss rounds. This one, you fire so fast that it's okay if you miss rounds, because most of them with 0 recoil are landing somewhere on the target and they are hitting like an absolute truck. This one hits like a slightly larger truck, but not large enough of a truck to justify the massive, massive reduction in fire rate. That being said though, still fine as a backup. I would just highly recommend you go for the 2 over the 10. Then let's talk a Psyker staff. Let's go ahead and talk about our electrokinetic staff. This is going to be a bit contentious here. As I know many players like to spam with this staff. I think I would be doing it a disservice, honestly, to say this staff is in a good position right now. This staff really only exists to spam left click with. It is a bit of a difficult decision for me to whether I want to place this in a fine backup or a fine waste of ammo. It is a weapon by my own tier list that I've sort of hung the albatross around my own neck here. It is a weapon that people make builds around. I just genuinely do not think it is a good weapon to make builds around unless you were a player who's already stunting on the game as it is. This weapon, I suppose I will give it a fine backup tier here. It has really, really high left click, the little energy ball spammy damage. That's quite fine, right? That does very well for itself. The problem here is that the right click is not good for anything except for crowd controlling targets. So it's pretty good at like disarming ragers or bulwarks or pushing back bursters. But outside of that, it does effectively, it's effectively taking your potential DPS and cutting it in like fifths. You do almost no damage and you generate way too much peril with this thing on right click, which is a damn shame because this weapon is so fun to spam the lightning with, and it's such a cool concept. But in practice, for whatever reason, this weapon generates twice or 3 times as much peril as I feel it should for the effective damage that it does, and the damage that it can do is limited to a small amount of targets. And in a game like Darktide, which over time is seeming to creep up and up and up in terms of the number of targets that are on the field, well, then you're obviously going to be biased towards weapons that can handle much more of that at a time. And so that's where he's starting to fall behind here. I really hope we can see some buffs to the right-click, shocky thing of this year, as well as some additional Psyker staves. That would be quite nice, wouldn't it? But it's okay as a backup, right? It's if you're going for a melee Psyker, it's a fine backup there. It's ammo-free. It is kind of like an ammo-free version of our las pistol here, although I still think the las pistol is probably a little bit better. A lot bit better. But yeah, you could do worse than this weapon as a backup weapon, but I wouldn't recommend building around it at its current power state. Compare that to, though, the Void Strike Staff, which I'm going to put in fine waste of ammo. Now, obviously, it doesn't have ammo, but as I alluded to before I started the ranking, this is the weapon I was thinking of when I was talking about this being a waste of time to use. The Void Strike Staff used to be one of the more potentially DPS-heavy staves in the Psyker's arsenal, because it had a unintentional, turns out, synergy with one of the Psyker's talents, where if you were getting headshots, it could enable the next shot to be a crit. And so you would aim at head level, charge a blast, and then go through it, and it would just crit everybody in a massive long line, annihilate them, and the critical hits on this thing do absurd damage, right? With Surge, which doubles the orbs you shoot, really, really crazy stuff. That got nerfed, and of course, this weapon does not do very well with really, really excessive amounts of enemies, and with like Carapace type enemies. It can still damage them, but only on crits, more or less. What has happened is effectively the geometry of this weapon is not very good for what it intends to do. If you are going to do a lot of damage, that's cool, but this thing takes a very long time. I'm always stunned when I use this weapon. Like, it seems so good in concept, and then you pick it up and then you try to charge a single shot and you're like, Jesus Christ, am I ever gonna be able to fire this stupid thing? Finally, you let off the bolt, and it might nick a couple of enemies, but because enemies are swarming from all directions right now, yeah, the fact that you can obliterate enemies in a line is really not useful to the size of and the shape of hordes that you encounter at this point in Darktide, right? When we were in an earlier era and we could just blast down hallways and that was like the entire horde, yeah, that was fine back then. But now, especially as you're entering into Havoc mode and enemies are just so numerous that they're getting up on you, you really want a staff that can spam fast enough to clear those enemies before they get there, which I think is where the Electro Staff can actually compete like a little bit. Or you want staves that have a huge AoE advantage, and that's where the last two staves are going to pull way ahead of the rest of this crew, is that they have a better geometrical shape for dealing with lots and lots of stuff. A circle is really good, and a cone is a long cone is even better, but we'll save those for a little bit later on here. So suffice to say, I think this staff is really behind in terms of its, I mean, it's very clearly behind in terms of its damage per second potential. It is just far too slow to cast for the effect that you get out of it, and yeah, that's where we're gonna have to put it. Now let's go back to some regular humanoid weapons with the Recon las guns, which are, as you might imagine, excellent weapons. They're gonna go in the build around this tier. These are some of the only like assault rifle type weapons in the game that are able to just carry a build on classes. Veteran, it uses them the best, obviously, because of Shock Trooper and just infinite ammo effectively, but the Zealot and the Psyker can use them quite well as well because of crit chance being good there. And yeah, I think that these are just super, super solid weapons. Now, in terms of talking about which one here is the best, we have sort of a choice for you to make. You have on the left the blue one. This is the fastest, fires about 20 rounds per second. On the right is the brown, the slowest. It fires about 8 rounds per second. And in the middle is the middleest twin, which fires somewhere in the range of like 10 or 11 rounds per second. Now, here's the thing to consider. On the right, with this brown one, with that slow fire rate, you can get high individual hits. So this will be for a more direct damage approach. You could take this one, and that means you're going to want to be landing headshots and getting buffs to your direct damage. So with this sort of mark, we want to put the blessings on the weapon that give it additional damage on hit, additional damage on kill, lean into crits and the raw damage of the weapon, because it can actually deal some quite considerable damage, way more damage than you can deal with individual shots of the infantry las gun, while also still firing at 8 rounds per second. On the other end of the spectrum, we have the super fast firing 20 round per second Recon las gun. This thing, you really want to lean into the Infernus Blessing. The Infernus Blessing on crit stacks 4 stacks of fire, up to 12 stacks. So all you have to do is fire at a target for a fraction of a second and have a decently high crit rate, and you're going to get 12 stacks of fire on them, which is enough to burn most all targets that are not like crushers or large ogre types to death. So gunners, like machine gunners or dogs or trappers or whatever, you hit them with 3 shots, which are very, very low damage, like 60 or so damage. And then the fire, 12 stacks of fire, does the rest of the work. So you can just stop firing at that point. The weapons that use that Infernus Blessing, like this one, and also like our las pistol here, they go like up a tier in terms of usefulness when you have the health bars mod installed, because you can see whether or not they have X number of stacks of fire on them. Once you see 3 stacks on like a trapper or a dog, you know you can move on to another target. Now, my potential, or my choice for the best of these 3 is this one right here. I believe this is called the V1C. I can't remember, but it's the middle of the 2. It's not brown, it's not blue, it's whatever this color is. This one here has a middle fire rate and a middle damage, but it has enough fire rate to make use of that Infernus Blessing, which is the best blessing on the gun, and then it also has enough damage that it can effectively just, you know, straight kill stuff with direct damage as well. So you get a good combination of the 2. And when you look at the ammo count of all 3 of these weapons and multiply it by their damage per shot, this one comes out ahead. We have about 60 to 65,000 on both of these 2, and this one is a little bit over 70,000. So you're picking up roughly like a 10-15% extra total damage that you can deal just without considering any additional blessings and stuff. So this one has extra utility there. So I have been using this one pretty loyally since I discovered that, and it's produced some serious results, so I highly recommend it. Now let's do RBDs, because RBDs has a couple of unique weapons here. We'll go ahead and place our lovely Arbitrators Executioner shotguns up here in the fine backup tier. Very, very solid weapons. I am glad they added these to the game. They feel powerful, they are beautiful to behold, and I love the shell system here. Make certain you are using those additional shells. They are free. Every time you pick up a small ammo supply or ammo supply of any size, you will get all those shells back. So effectively you get like 7 extra, or I think it's 6 extra special shells for every time you pick up even like a tiny piece of ammo, which is great because those shells are quite useful. You have the electric shells and you have the brittleness shells, depending on which mark you go for. Now, as to the eternal debate, do you want to go with the Mark III, which is sort of the snub nose, or do you want to go with the needle nose pliers version, the Mark 8, whatever it's called, the sniper version? I, for some time, was going with the sniper version because this thing has insane cross-map potential on gunners and stuff, has a high damage on a pretty high minimum pellet count, which means that you can just barely nick a sniper from across the map and they're gonna die from you know, lacerations from birdshot somehow. But then this weapon over here has the Mark III, the Street Sweeper style, has really crept back up at me, and I think that this is where I am sort of hanging my hat in terms of saying this one is slightly more powerful, or I prefer it more for what I like to do on the RBDs. This weapon, being able to pull it out and just point in the general direction of, oh, I know there's a trapper behind this horde, and just pump the horde like 3 times, stacking up Fire Frenzy and Killing Floor, whatever it's called. Those buffs are very, very good, and they make this thing pop a lot of damage, has a high stagger potential, and having 6 shells instead of 4 is also good as well. The special ammo in this one, I think, is just better than the special ammo on the sniper. The sniper, you know, can apply brittleness, but how often do you really need that on a class like RBDs who has a bunch of mace weapons, which kind of ignore armor to start with? The shock shells, on the other hand, can incapacitate enemies. So if you are a player who's able to multitask there, you can pull this shotgun out, quickly fire off a shock shell at a group of bulwarks and stuff, and disarm them, so you can deal with them, you know, the old-fashioned way of punching them in their bridge of their nose until their brain is crushed. And yeah, that is actually quite useful. So remember to use that on this shotgun. But both of them are very powerful. Both of them have good blessings, and they really serve a nice backup role, or a good solid secondary to whip out in a pinch for the RBDs. No complaints there. Ogryn weapons, though. Let's talk the Ogryn shotgun. I suppose I'll start with the Ogryn shotgun that's actually decent, which is the kickback. You know, once upon a time, the kickback was a very, very great weapon. And it was, in fact, such a powerful weapon that, like, it just kind of was assumed to be the use on Ogryns. But over time, enemies' health has creeped up, especially if you play on Havoc, where enemies' base healths are increased. And this weapon is just not very ammo efficient. I'm going to give it a fine waste of ammo here. The reason this weapon has problems in the current state is because this weapon, the kickback here, pretty much relies on killing in one shot. If you do not kill your target in one shot, not only have you effectively wasted a shot of ammo, because the second shot is going to be massively overkill, right? You'll take them to like 25% of their HP. Now your next shot is going to put them to negative 50 or 60%. Not only have you wasted that, but you've wasted a ton of time because this thing is a one-shotter, so it takes an eternity to reload. And you don't actually get that many rounds. You're sitting at like 40-ish rounds total, I think like 45 rounds or so. And that is just not at all up to snuff with what some of the other weapons are currently carrying. Notably, the other single-shot weapon, the grenade launcher, doesn't have that many fewer rounds and it shoots grenades instead. Or you can go with the grenade gauntlet, which has many more rounds, and each of its rounds are longer range and more impactful. Yeah, this weapon just kind of lives or dies on killing in one shot, and when we were back in an era of Darktide where the highest difficulty was Auric, and you also had the ability to combine this with a hugely boosted rending and flat damage from point blank barrage where it was 30 and 30, you could one-shot crushers to the face with this. Now that has been nerfed, so that's not even good anymore. Yeah, this weapon is just behind the curve in terms of what you need to be able to do in Darktide to currently be useful, and it is also very wasteful of a precious resource, which is ammo. So I'm gonna have to put it down here and being a fine waste of ammo. It'll also waste a lot of your time too, because yeah, it's just not got a very good time to kill anymore. Sad, but true. Now I do want to kind of give a upbeat or a more positive note here, which is to say that hey, it isn't the worst ogre weapon, which is gonna go to ignoble title, which will go to the Ripper guns here. I make people mad every time I do this, but Ripper guns just are not good. I'm sorry. Ripper guns have, for whatever reason, terrible accuracy, pretty terrible damage. Like the damage in these weapons is somehow behind combat shotguns. They can't land pellets on targets. They even have a really, really slow time to like equip and brace for some reason. The Ogryn is in desperate need of a weapon that can be whipped out in a quick amount of time and used to dispatch a target. That's where the kickback here comes in clutch, right? You can pull it out in a pinch and you will kill that trapper. You're gonna pulverize that trapper. Then you're gonna have to reload for 5 seconds, but you'll kill that trapper. This weapon, you might wing the trapper a couple times, but chances are she'll get like a hit and then like roll away and you'll have to do it again. And it's just so annoying and so encumbering to pull these stupid Ripper guns out and never seem to land a shot on the target. I have no idea why a gun like this is as inaccurate as it is, does as little damage as it does on the Ogryn of all classes. This weapon should have the damage profile and the capabilities of the Street Sweeper Arbites shotgun and just be able to go boom, 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 and wipe out a horde, right? I don't care what they need to do to compensate it for that, but yeah, it really just doesn't have any use at all right now outside of, I guess it's got the can opener blessing, and that's kind of funny sometimes. But yeah, these weapons just feel terrible to use. They're super encumbering, they're super slow, they're super inaccurate, the damage is piss poor, and yeah, I hate using them. Every time I pick one up on the Ogryn, because I'll get like a good drop and I'm leveling a character, just having fun, and I am just incredibly disappointed when I go to use it. So if you're an Ogryn and using this, please yeah, consider something else. And don't make that thing that you also consider as a twin leg stubber, because we're putting this one down there too. Sorry, sorry Ogryns, Jesus Christ. I mean, the Ogryn, we all know, the Ogryn isn't doing great for diversity weapons right now, but I just really wanted to make a point here that both of these weapons have terrible effective DPS, especially for the ammo they consume. This one can't hit a target to save its life, and has like such a scattered shot of the effective damage on it per any given target is very minimal. This one here does 0 effective damage and takes forever to equip, forever to reload. Pretty much the problem with the twin leg stubber, twin leg heavy stubber, is that this weapon was like simpatico with the old Ogryn prior to the Ogryn rework in March or so of 2025. That rework nerfed Point Blank Barrage and changed the Burst Limiter Override keystone in such a way that it kind of removed all possible synergies that existed before with this weapon. Because previously, Burst Limiter Override had synergies that really only this Twin Link Stubber weapon, especially the fastest firing, the Atlas, which is this one I want to say, could access. And that made it a good choice for that specific one weapon. And then we had Point Blank Barrage, which had the fire stacking up to 32 stacks of fire, which was insane. And again, only this weapon of all of the Ogryn's weapons could feasibly access that 32 fire stack power. And so it was a pretty decent choice. You can melt bosses with it, and you would do okay against hordes and other stuff too. Granted, this weapon has always been god-awfully ammo hungry. If you can still run with this weapon, right? You will do okay damage range-wise, but you will consume double the ammo of anybody else in your team who's doing a comparable amount of damage. And if you wanted to, say for instance, run as a veteran, doing a comparable amount of damage with a recon las gun, you'll use half of the amount of ammo. So these weapons end up using 4x the ammo consumption of just a better way to play with a recon las gun. So if you want to go like minigun, blasting into hordes, melting bosses, you just go recon las gun these days, and you are going to be so much more ammo efficient and easy to use than these things are. Yeah, so these things just got completely fucked by the Ogryn changes and broke all the synergies, and that kind of revealed how at their base, the only thing they had going was that fact that they had perfect synergies with the way the talent tree was set up before, and now they just seriously need some reworks. It breaks my heart that these weapons, this is supposed to be a massive fuck-off shotgun. This is supposed to be literally ripping a turret off of a vehicle and firing at enemies, and both of them feel weaker than just about any other weapon on this list when they're fired at enemies. Literally, I feel like the braced auto gun does more damage per second than the Twin Link Stubber does right now. Oh, braced auto guns, by the way. Yeah, they're pretty bad. In fact, I think they're pretty useless trash right now, which is hard to say because I'm a big braced autogun fan. I really, really like this weapon. I want it to be good. I've made a number of builds around it. I made a build for Veteran on it back in the day. I made a build for Arbites, the ACAB build, and I even tinkered with it on the Hive Scum because the Hive Scum was the last refuge for this weapon, I believe, right? It's kind of like the only class that could really feasibly make it good. And that's because this weapon consumes a lot of ammo in order to do what it does. The problem is that it just doesn't produce any results anymore. For some reason, this weapon has almost no critical ratio, meaning 0.3 critical ratio. You're only getting 30% more damage when you get a crit. So there's no synergy with crits on this weapon, which means Hive Scum and Veteran get no synergies with any of their crit shit, which is a ton. It has really poor aim. If you're shooting this thing unbraced, you're not hitting fuck. And when you do brace, you move at an absolute snail's pace, which is just so stupid that I don't understand why you have to move that much slower when you brace at all. So yeah, the only way this weapon can be sort of salvaged, the way that I salvage it on Arbites is by putting it with Castigator stance so we can move at full speed while bracing, and it's okay there, I guess. You'd think the Hive Scum's infinite ammo and other various damage buffs while he's wielding range would offset this, but the throughput on the damage, the damage type that you're dealing there is just so poor. It has no synergy with headshots, and it has no real capacity to deal headshots because the spread is so large, and you can't be mobile while you use it. So having infinite ammo just puts you nowhere. And for the Hive Scum particularly, it's outclassed in every single respect by the infantry auto gun, which just gets way better mileage on the class. So what could they do for this weapon in order to save it from where it's at? If this weapon is supposed to be a braced autogun, why aren't we running and gunning with this thing? When you see Rambo in the movies and he's got a braced autogun underneath his armpit and he's firing it at the Ruskies, or I don't know, I haven't watched Rambo in forever or ever, I don't know. But when he's firing this at enemies, he's running around like a lunatic and throwing grenades with his other hand and shit like that. This weapon, for whatever reason, requires you to move at the speed that like an encamped sniper would to get no accuracy and no damage buffs out of it, and does middling damage to boot. The only thing this weapon has going for it is high stagger potential, which can stagger targets out of like, you know, what they're doing, but there's better weapons for that that we'll talk about here in a second. So yeah. Really, really useless right now. If you have a build with this in there, throw an infantry autogun instead. You'll deal more damage with better results. GG. I suppose I should talk about infantry autoguns since I mentioned them by name a few times there, and feel like it's only fair to give them their shout out here. This is the weapon that I was thinking of when I created this tier of good on Hive Scum only. Specifically, the one that is very, very good is this Vrax Mark V right here. I think it's called the Vrax now. It used to be called the Columnus Mark V. This weapon has always, well, way back in the day, was one of the highest performing DPS weapons in Darktide. The problem nowadays is the ammo consumption is insane on these things, right? You will eat through your ammo supply in no time. The only real class that would effectively use a weapon like this would be the Veteran, and the Veteran is going to get better mileage out of the Recon lasguns because of Shock Trooper. And ammo, especially on Havoc difficulties, is a precious, precious resource. You just can't have guns like this that don't deal with ranged or with armored targets and also chew through ammo. You need to kind of pick one or the other. So that's where this weapon falls down. However, the Hive Scum, of course, can swoop in and save it from a grisly fate by saying, hey, no problem, fam, I got you, here's infinite ammo. And that takes this weapon and turns it up to some pretty crazy, crazy numbers. It makes it into an absolute bullet hose. If you haven't seen my minigun Hive Scum build, the Vrax Mark V, just hip firing with this thing is quite comical, and you can just repeatedly boost your fire rate using stim supply and the speed stims. It gets insane returns on headshots. It gets insane returns on critical hits. This thing does 3 to 4x on critical hits and headshots. So yeah, very, very high synergy with the high critical hit classes, which is pretty much every class that might use this weapon at this point. Like, crits are so abundant on every human class at this point. Only Ogryn kind of can't crit. And yeah, so it's very, very good damage potential wise there. And then the Hive Scum is able to boost it to relevance by providing it infinite ammo. So I think this thing, even if they nerfed Pickpocket or something, would be a very feasible choice on Desperado Scum. And it's also, again, a super fast weapon. I think it is up to a 0.6 move speed, so you can zip around the map with high mobility while this is going on, and it has a good set of blessings like Dum Dum that can stack damage while you're hitting targets, or stack damage from killing targets. Just very, very good all around, and check it out on Hive Scum if you haven't. I love the Vrax the most, and then the Columnus is my second favorite there. Okay, from here, I suppose we should address some big power weapons, like the actual power weapons of the game. Let's talk the bolters. We have two marks for the bolter. We have the Spearhead Bolt Gun Regular Edition, and then the AoE sort of boom, boom, boom blasting edition. Both of these are going to be built around this tier, and I don't mean this in the sense that you should be making this weapon sort of your main weapon in a build. You know, Veteran can probably do like some marksman's focus, snipey style stuff with this, with Executioner stance if you really, really wanted to. But I think mostly what I mean by that is this weapon is such a powerful secondary to pull out. It solves situations that you would otherwise not have a solution for built into your build by pulling it out. You say, oh, I want this boss absolutely destroyed. And then you whip out your the regular version here. I forget what it's called, the Mark III or whatever it is. This one, you whip this gun out and then you go boom, 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 boom in the boss's head, and then they just die, right? So on like Arbites, Arbites has an amazing synergy with this, right? You can prime the target with Execution Order. You can have the Monster Hunter buff that's at the bottom of Execution Order tree, and then you can just go and annihilate them. This thing does tons of damage on Arbites. It does, you know, crazy damage on most classes because this thing has immense direct damage, good armor penetration. This can be your weapon to counter Crusher packs if you really needed to. On the other hand, we have its cousin, the AoE Explodey round version, Mark IIB or something. This thing is also very, very powerful. It still has enough direct damage that it can one-shot gunners and shotgunners if you hit them in the head or torso. And additionally, it can be used to disrupt or just most times outright pulp hordes. So this can be your horde countering weapon in addition to being sniping. The problem with this weapon is ammo count. The overall ammo count is low at about 115 total for this one, and then I think this is like 100 or so. But I think that's perfectly balanced, right? This is what I've always said is this is one of, if not the most balanced range weapon in the game. It is super powerful, and it has counters to really, really dangerous armored enemies. However, it does have downsides. It is an incredibly long reload time. It is slow to move with. It's slow to equip. And it has a low ammo count, but it makes up for that in power. And so this is a great weapon. It's easily one of the best secondaries for an Arbites to have. It's easily one of the best secondaries for a Zealot to have. And yeah, so I can't, and you could also run primary with it on Veteran. I've been seeing a lot more of that lately, although I think there's obviously a slightly better choice if you're just going to go primary blasting for armor penetration on that class. But we'll get to that in a second. And so speaking of the bolt gun and being on Zealot, I want to talk about another weapon that is definitely built around this tier that specifically belongs to the Zealot, and that is the Pregatus Flamer. This Flamer is such a workhorse. One of the things that is just really undervalued about the Zealot is he has access to this weapon. Fire and flame stacks are incredibly destructive. They take a long time to fall off. They do a lot of damage per tick, and the direct damage of this weapon is also very, very appreciable. So when you turn this weapon on enemies and you just unload a whole canister of gas, the effective damage that you can deal with this is kind of crazy. Like, it will wipe out anything short of crushers, no problem. And that is what makes this weapon so powerful as a secondary on the Zealot. If you're going for the throwing knives on the Zealot, meaning you can pick off your specialists and annoying shit like that at range without having to devote your secondary weapon to that goal, you can use this Flamer and you can contribute massively to your team. Whenever you see a horde coming from a direction, whip this thing out and you completely take out that horde. You say bye-bye, horde. It's gone. The thing that I always see Zealots doing with this, though, is they're just firing it at stuff that would be dead either way. Everybody is already fighting the enemies that are directly in front of us. You've already got a whole team that's out there meleeing it, and you've got a psyker who's already using their flame staff on it. That's not when you need to use this weapon. When you should use this weapon is when you have a horde that has gotten summoned in, you've got people fighting on the front, and you turn around and you look and there's a horde encroaching on the back. You can single-handedly wipe this out with this. And the best thing about this weapon is that one tank of gas is pretty much all you need in that pinch. Then you can reload and be ready to go next time. And if you have a veteran on the team, you can be slowly resupplying ammo over time and building back up so that you pretty much always have this ready to go when you need to. So yeah, it just serves such a unique role. It does such an immense amount of damage and is so efficiently, really. And it really scales super well with the way that Darktide is trending, with more and more density, more and more enemies spamming everywhere, just nukes everything. And yeah, you should definitely be running this as your secondary, unless you are a Chorus Zealot, I would say, because Chorus Zealots kind of need to spend all their time like attacking, getting their cooldown down. Yeah, this is an immensely useful secondary on the Zealot specifically, built around it. Then we gotta talk some general stuff. Let's go back to revolvers. I love the revolvers, guys. The revolvers are easily one of my favorite weapons in the game. We've got the Zerona long shot sort of snipey style revolver, and we've got the Agrippina, I think, the quick draw fan the hammer revolver. Both of them I'm going to put in the fine backup tier. Now, I know you can certainly build around your sniping revolver there. You can go for, a big iron veteran or whatever it might be and deal a lot of damage. However, I just don't think that the ammo supply is where it needs to be to do this sword build. These are absolutely excellent sidearms, right? They are perfect for the enterprising Zealot or Arbites or whatever it is, because they are pinpoint precise, especially the aim down sights one. They have enough stopping power to kill anything instantly, a head or body shot usually kills like most light targets. And they do have the hand cannon for 60% rending on guaranteed crit blessing. So you can just guarantee, on crit blessing. And then you can also guarantee crits with the I'm not going to remember it again, but yeah, the ability to aim down sights in order to stack your chance to crit, and then you just snap off a shot at a crusher, and you take like easily 75% of their HP. So this weapon does have counters to just about everything in the game. It can one-shot most targets with the headshot, which makes it very efficient, and it's hyper accurate, like one of the best snipers in the game. Probably only the bolt gun really competes in terms of sniping. I guess the Hellbore is fine, but yeah, it's way faster to equip than the Hellbores are. So yeah, really, really solid sidearm, very fast to equip. Just make certain you got it reloaded when you need to have it reloaded. Snap off a shot. You know, they've already buffed the thing's ammo consumption or ammo capacity one time, and the damage very, very considerably. So I think it's in a fine place, honestly. I don't think the revolver needs to be any more powerful. It's a revolver. It's not supposed to be a power weapon in the game. So yeah, we're looking at a fine backup tier here. Then we are going to talk about the Hellbores, since I mentioned them. I whispered their name, and they've been summoned into existence. Now, I could be contentious here, guys. I could be, I could be problematic and make people really, really mad at me. You know, Hellbore mains are out there. They're real. There's dozens of us. The Hellbore is such a tricky weapon. It really doesn't play well to the game of Darktide, really. You know, with the swarming enemies and just being so many enemies. However, I cannot deny that it is a strong, strong weapon, right? This weapon has absurd damage potential if you can land headshots. If. Massive if. So if you are goated, right? If you can land shots, you're consuming effectively no ammo. You effectively have an infinite ammo supply with this weapon, especially if you're on Veteran, which is probably the best class to use it. And it can one or two piece crushers, one piece just about everything else, chunk bosses. It's just a matter of landing those shots and watching your spacing in such a way that you can keep away from enemies while you're doing that. And that is a difficult task, but it is feasible. I don't think this is a backup weapon. I also don't think this weapon is a waste of ammo, and it's definitely not useless trash, but I will put it in the build around this tier with a heavy caveat that you have to be goated. Now, which mark you use is up to personal preference. I prefer the heaviest firing mark when I play, you know, the one that takes the longest to charge. I cannot with these tiny little things. I think it might be this one. With these tiny little icons, I can't tell the difference. But the slowest firing, heaviest hitting mark is my preferred one when I try to play, but I'm not particularly good with it. But even so, I can still see the potential for it. If you have a team who can play sufficiently to defend you, or you are goated to the point where you can defend yourself, yeah, quite good. And of course the bayonet is, for whatever reason, very effective against like captain shields and stuff like that. So you can also contribute in terms of like killing captains with this weapon too. So I'll give it build around this tier, but again, with the caveat, you must have the skills to pay the bills. If you cannot aim, if you suck, if you're a console player or whatever, don't. Just don't. Just go recon last gun, guys. Okay. I think that should make people plenty happy that, yeah, it landed up there. But, I mean, I really can't deny the potential damage. It's there. It's just a matter of actually hitting your shots. Now, where the potential damage isn't is down here with these pieces of crap. I was, like, optimistic about these weapons coming off of the fall update last year when they got that buff, but my optimism quickly faded. These weapons just do not have a reason to exist currently in Darktide. There are far too many enemies that fundamentally do not give a fuck about a bullet being shot at them, like they're crushers, plasma gunners, maulers, bulwarks. All of those enemies are more or less invulnerable to this gun in particular. So if any of those are out there, you're fucked. If you, for some reason, happen to know that every single enemy in the game is going to be just a regular-ass gunner, sure, you'll be okay with it, but why would you choose this weapon when anything else exists? Because you are going with a bullet-style weapon, which means if you're playing Veteran or something, you're not getting the benefit of Shock Trooper. The ability to aim and hit targets is severely hampered by the fact this thing has no sights. They claim to have reduced the recoil, but the recoil still sucks donkey dick. Like, it's really, really bad. And the overall damage throughput when you're like just shooting, and even if you hit the target every single time, is super low. Like, even just hitting body shots over and over again is like no damage. If you hit headshots repeatedly, it's pretty much no damage. Just take for a second, like, go into a game, build build a veteran with like, you know, marksman's focus and shout or something like that, and go into a game and then just try your best, try your absolute hardest and to play with one of these weapons and see what your score looks like at the end. Play like Auric or something so you don't get cucked by metal. Then go back in and just play that same exact game with the heavy las pistol Mark II. You will deal like 8x damage because you can literally just spam this weapon. You can just spam it at general head level. You'll hit headshots. You'll instantly evaporate that enemy's entire health bar. These things you cannot spam. You have to aim meticulously and precisely, and even then you'll miss shots because the recoil is out of control. It's out of this world. You can't see what you're shooting at because the sights are so bad. Yeah. Just completely irrelevant weapons, which is really sad because it's quite clear to see that all of these weapons here, braced autogun, infantry autogun, vigilant autogun, and infantry lasgun to a lesser extent, all of these weapons, a lot of thought and intent went into designing them. But they are Darktide 1.0 guns. They are guns that were balanced for a version of the game where, you know, like tactical shooting and middling damage was considered like status quo, where that's the best thing a gun should be doing is like, you know, sniping off a couple of rounds and killing individual poxwalkers and stuff like that. Unfortunately, that is not the bent that Darktide's sort of history has taken, but nor really was it at the time, because even at the time of the game being introduced, we had clear dominant competitors that made these guns completely irrelevant. And let's talk about one right now. The plasma gun goes clearly in the who balanced this tier. The plasma gun is a gun that I don't think has ever been balanced, like it has ever even been attempted to be balanced. As I understand, or the story goes, this like maybe some lore or old wives' tale about the plasma gun was that when this weapon was designed, the people who put the weapon together and designed it picked a really, really high number for the damage and picked a really, really high number for the cleave. And then that has stayed. That has just been the damage and the cleave, because this weapon has thousands of damage, like literally thousands of damage in the tooltip. Like that's just on light attacks, right? Like that's like 900 or something on a light attack. And then like, what is it? Like 2,000, whatever on a charge. Like it's insane. And the impact, or it's not the impact, the cleave is literally 100 on this weapon. So it goes through everything, including walls, including bulwark shields. They had for a while sort of some drafted plans to nerf that, or we got a leak of that, and they pulled back from that. So this weapon is still capable of evaporating everything in a big ass long line. It is perfectly accurate. It just has a little bit of delay on the fire, but like, you know, this weapon doesn't have recoil, so to speak, so you're not going to be missing your target like that. And if you hit the target in the chest, this thing's projectile is roughly the size of like a sapling tree. Like it's probably like 6 inches diameter at least. So you just kind of have to aim in the vague area of like the upper chest headshot box region, and they're dead. They're just gone. And this weapon is, of course, one of the most dominant at upper levels of play because of that efficiency, because of the ability that like 1 or 2 shots kill stuff. But I mean, I've been re-leveling characters recently and like playing at lower levels, and the second you see a veteran playing with this gun, you're like, oh Jesus, like I'm not even gonna get to play, because on difficulties of Malice and Heresy, the health values are so low on enemies that this is just wiping them out with one body shot regardless. They just point in the general direction of enemies and they all die. It's not even like headshot necessitating. So yeah, this weapon is completely overtuned. The alleged downsides of this weapon are that you can like overheat, but no one is overheating because no one's doing anything but spamming light attacks, because that's all you have to do. And it's supposed to have a long reload time, but of course you can just circumvent that by playing weapon specialist with the veteran and never reload, or you can just reload, because you literally have one magazine. There's one backup magazine in this gun, so it takes 34 shots to empty your first mag. You reload, it takes I think 7 seconds or something like that, and then you get to shoot 34 more times where you have to fire again. Like most games, especially like in the difficulties most people play out, you're not firing that much. So yeah, this weapon is just disgusting. The only place it really lacks is in like consistent boss damage, but everything else dies in one shot. No real skill required. Definitely the flame staff equivalent of the veteran. One of the more egregious range weapons in the game. Who balanced it? I would posit the answer is nobody. All right, now let's talk about a very nicely balanced weapon I like a lot, and that is the bolt pistol. The bolt pistol is definitely a build around this tier weapon. Both of them are getting this. The reason it goes in this tier is because this weapon has unique synergies. This weapon can uniquely provide buffs to explosives. So both grenades and like anything with an AoE, like rocket launchers, if you simply have this in your inventory and you take the proximity blast or whatever it's called blessing, you get a big buff to the radius of those explosions, which is like pretty fucking cool. I love this as a concept. I love that there's a weapon in the game that can just be slotted in your secondary. Hey, it might not be like the best secondary. It's pretty close to being the best secondary, but it might not be like the best gun in the world, but it has this sort of unique, bespoke mechanic that you would want for certain builds. And in addition to that, it can also apply bleeds with puncture, which is quite nice and handy. It is quite snappy and responsive. It's just like kind of like a better, it's a better sidearm, I think, than the revolver at this point, quite honestly, because the revolver on most targets is overkill. The sole thing that the revolver has over this gun is that the revolver can kill crushers and carapace armored targets. This weapon really can't. But, you know, most targets aren't that. So, yeah, you get this gun. Now, as to what mark I prefer, for the longest time, I was preferring the standard mark, this one right up here. But recently, I have become a convert to the area of effect one. It does enough damage to be killing hordes, etc. And it seems to have a much more stable, like, ability to shoot and hit headshots, with the sights being a little bit better. And its headshots, its direct damage, is still plenty to get those one shots. And yeah, this weapon is really good. It's awesome on Grenade Veteran. It's a good sidearm for Arbites. It's a good sidearm for Zealot. It is very good on Hive Scum, actually, because Hive Scum, of course, has Rocket Launcher, which can be with 25% extra AoE, Jesus Christ, and infinite ammo, which is the one place where this weapon does fall down a little bit, is as a low ammo supply. But, of course, you know, Hive Scum doesn't give a fuck about that. So yeah, really, really solid weapon. Definitely one of the best sidearms of the game and build defining. So I got to give it the build around this tier. Then we'll talk about the Grenade Gauntlet, which I will put, this is quite a consideration here. I'll put this at the top of a fine backup tier. I don't think that this Grenade Gauntlet rises to the level of being built around. It is certainly a quality weapon in the sidearm slot for the Ogryn, in probably the most effective way to play the Ogryn, which is with shield and taunt, right? But it is only just a backup, right? It can quickly enable steady aim, which will give you braced toughness regen over time, but it isn't really doing anything too exemplary on its own. The weapon is fine. It's got the ability to snipe somewhat effectively. It's got a little bit of an AoE. It's got a good ammo supply. Now they buffed the ammo supply, decent amount of damage. But I think that the thing that really has always irked me about this weapon is it does not have a tracer or like a indicator of the trajectory of the firing path. For some reason, when you're bracing the Rumbler, you get that. But this weapon, even though it still has an arc, does not. And that makes it kind of frustrating to hit distant targets with, which is something that's, I think, really holding it back. Outside of that, I think this weapon is like balanced in terms of the damage that it does. It does fuck all against like armored targets, really. But I think that's by design. And it does have a good bit of impact. So like it'll stagger and bowl enemies around, and it can be used to counter like mutants and things because it has pretty good damage against maniacs. It can disrupt mutants and stuff like that. Not mutants. What am I trying to say? Ragers. Ragers can get disrupted by this. So yeah, not a bad weapon at all. Definitely one of the more solid sidearms. Probably the most dependable sidearm that he's got, because you get 5 shots. You can brace this thing. It's got its own like attack patterns and stuff like that. So yeah, I'll give it a fine backup tier. I think that is going to be superseded by the Rumbler. I'll put the Rumbler in the build around this tier. Not to say that on most builds the Rumbler is like more powerful, but on the whole, the Rumbler is a more powerful weapon. I don't know if anymore I would place this into the Who Balanced this tier though, because Rumbler is very ammo hungry at doing what it does, and we are kind of in this weird spot where the lower difficulties in the game, the Rumbler doesn't really shine. If you've ever played a lower difficulty and you've maybe tried to make Ogrenheimer build do a thing, you're playing on Heresy, it doesn't make any sense, right? You won't really produce the results you would expect because, like, the Rumbler's just overkill for everything at that level, and the packs aren't large enough to really do anything. At higher difficulties, though, especially with a lot of the modifiers that have been added in recently, like the pink modifier, like Rotten Armor, like the green range damage reduction modifiers, this weapon, it is very, very good at the large pack sizes that the higher difficulties like Auric and Maelstroms and especially Havoc provide, but the ammo consumption is a big problem, and the resistance to damage that a ton of those enemies have is a really, really big problem for it. So when you start not killing on 2, 3, 4 grenades on targets, you start very quickly realize that, oh shit, like I am wasting too much ammo and taking too much time and not getting too much results. Not to say that this isn't a super, super powerful weapon, right? Being able to whip out a grenade just to disrupt the whole area in the pinch, these grenades still also instantly kill Reapers and things like that, and they can deal some pretty immense damage to bosses, but I just don't think it is as broken as it once was back before Havoc has crept to the point where it is. I don't know at what point it did. I feel like maybe it was around the fall patch of last year, but it seems like over time, Havoc has gotten more and more insane to the point where now, like, I feel like I'm just having to shoot too much in order to deal the effective damage I need to with this weapon. Although it is still just the most powerful weapon pound for pound in terms of making your range damage count on the Ogryn. And then we will leave the Ogryn for dead, since we gotta go talk about some Hive Scum weapons. Let's go ahead and address a couple of these, and we'll come back after a brief non-Hive Scum hiatus. Let's talk about the stub pistols here first. I will put these in a fine backup tier. I think that's all I can really give them. The brace stub pistols are easily the least sort of stellar of their brethren. They have a good bit of stagger. They can deal some okay headshot damage. I love the way they reload super fast, and I like the little twirling silly thing for sniping. They clearly put a lot of thought into the weapon, and it is balanced, but it doesn't really shine with anything range-focused Hive Scum. So like going into a range-focused build where you're trying to juice your range weapon to the maximum, this is not your choice. They just aren't going to play very well in that case. But they are a great backup for melee Hive Scum because they are very quick to equip, they're very quick to reload, they have good ammo counts, they have good stagger, and they have fairly efficient time to kill. Is it my favorite secondary for a melee Hive Scum? Probably not, because there's one weapon that really stands out for that, because it's stupid as fuck. But yeah, they're fine, and they're fun to use, and that is winning in some regards. Would I do anything to this weapon to make it more powerful? I think that they should make this weapon like have armor penetration of some sort, if only on the weapon special, like swinging it around, maybe that could have a good bit of rending or something. It just sucks that we have a weapon that effectively is not all that different in the playstyle from the dual Uzis, and the dual Uzis outperform in DPS in like every other way. It would make sense to me if this weapon could penetrate armor, and that would be the one way that it stands above the Uzis. For right now, it's just kind of overshadowed by the dual auto pistols, dual Uzis, the doozies. This is a build around this tier weapon. Obviously, this is like the de facto Desperado, de facto like gun spam. It's between this and your Vrax Mark V in terms of bullet hose sort of styled Hive Scums. Both have very, very respectable sort of outputs. If you can juice your crit chance super high and go for headshots, this weapon is going to come out ahead. If you're just going for overall spray and pray, that'll shoot them in the chest and watching the raw damage melt them down, then the dual Uzis is your choice here. I would highly recommend these weapons, especially if you're going for a Desperado build, to spec into Speed Loader as one of your blessings, because these weapons do have kind of a ludicrously long, well, I mean, it makes sense, right? They're big-ass weapons. It would be annoying to reload 2 magazines and get them back to functional, but the reload is long on these, especially in comparison to the dual stub pistols. So yeah, playing around that, Speed Loader is a great addition to them, and the blessings for that. The mandatory blessings is Blaze Away. You have to choose Blaze Away with these. It's just got disgusting synergy, stacking strength, stacking damage, stacking stagger as you continue to fire, and then you refresh with Desperado and get a full mag of like 40% juice damage. Quite juicy. These weapons are a ton of fun. They feel cool. Yeah, definitely build around this tier. Very powerful, and again, literally could only ever function on a class like the Hive Scum, because otherwise you'd be through your ammo in about 8 seconds. Let's talk another specific weapon specific to a class. We'll do the Void Blast Staff. Build around this tier, for sure, right? This weapon, the choice of experienced and non-meta clinging psychers around the world. This is for psychers who really want to test their skills in positioning and really use the full gamut of what you can do with your psyker skills and your staff skills in this game. I really like the design of this weapon. The fact that it does have, sort of a mini game to skill in itself of figuring out, how to aim at distant targets. Moving your little reticle around and looking up and down to get it to cast at a certain distance. Figuring out how big a cast you need to do to finish off certain enemies. Casting it on yourself and then sliding or canceling the cast very quickly in order to get another cast out on the back end. Just a super cool weapon, not equal parts, but has a good bit of its power invested in defense and crowd control as well, which I think is kind of unique and flavorful for the Psyker. And yeah, it seems like this is like what I would look to as a balanced but powerful Psyker staff. And if this was the pinnacle of Psyker staff power in the game, I think we would be in a good place. Unfortunately, we have to talk about the other who balanced this weapon, or one of them anyway, and that's the Purgatus staff. This weapon is just comically imbalanced. I think there's really no two ways about it. Simply just walking through a level and left-clicking and venting a little bit, you can incapacitate every ranged enemy in the map. That's just a myriad of ways that this weapon is not balanced. It breaks the game. If you've not noticed this yet, guys, this weapon suppresses all ranged enemies hit. So normally gunners would be shooting at you, and that would be like a limiting factor for this weapon, right? Because they're going to take a little while to die because it's got a lingering flame effect. Nope, for whatever reason, this weapon has the immediate effect of panicking enemies the first time they are touched by its fire at all. So all ranged enemies just cease to do what they're doing entirely. You can also left-click on Ragers, which would be another potentially threatening enemy to a staff like this, because they don't die extremely quickly, and they are extremely aggressive, so they can get on you and melee you dead before you have a chance to get away, right? Unfortunately, for whatever reason, this weapon is designed so that the left click, again, knocks them back. It has enough knockback to knock Ragers out of their aggressive swings, so you can just be perfectly safe against them as well while building up damage stacks and killing them. Then you have to consider the damage potential per full peril load. So how many casts can you get out of this weapon before you overload on peril, before you need to vent, before you need to quell? It's easily twice, I don't have the numbers on hand, but it's easily twice as many as Electrokinetic Staff for some reason, and still more than the Void Blast Staff, even though every cast of this weapon does more effectively than any other staff, any of the other 3 staffs in the game. So every fully charged cast effectively has like insane damage potential. This weapon has Blaze Away, which can scale its stagger potential, its damage potential, and it can stay stacked up either on quickly casting repeated short blasts of the charge, or on spamming left click over and over, which just allows you to boost the damage of the damage over time effect by 40% as well. If this weapon wasn't powerful enough as a direct damage dealer with a massive 15-meter cone, and I was at some point going to do a video to talk about this and break down the geometry of these weapons, but the area of the circle that's covered by the Void Blast Staff is pretty finite. It's not all that big. The area of this cone, which is a 15-meter long, I want to say 30-degree wide cone, is massive. It is genuinely massive, and the fact you can swing it around at a moment's notice, like the fact that it doesn't like lock your camera in a direction or something, just means that there's really is no limitation to, to what you can do with that cone and what you can get the damage on. So all you have to do is spray it in the general direction of enemies, and once you're done spraying it, it has a extremely long-lasting, lingering effect called Soul Blaze, and Soul Blaze can stack up to, why do I always misremember this number? It's not 16, but it's like 17 or whatever. 15, it's 15, I think it's 15. No, I think it's 15, okay. Whatever it is. The maximum stack of Soul Blaze is high, and they take a long-ass time to fall off. And so effectively, once you get those stacks on enemy, which doesn't take very long, it takes like one cast to get this max stacked on enemies, they will effectively burn for thousands of damage over the next few seconds, during which time all you have to do is focus on not getting hit by these enemies. And granted, you are up to 15 meters away from them, and you're a very fast character, so you can just use your mobility and stay out of range forever. When we consider a weapon like the Purgatus Flamer, which has a very similar damage profile, right? It has Blaze Away, it has the ability to apply burn stacks up to 16 stacks, it has pretty impressive direct damage. The compensation for it is that it takes a long time to equip this weapon, the weapon is very ammo hungry, and it has a long reload animation, and you're very slow when you're wielding it. It's hard to be mobile and evade attacks while you're doing your thing. This weapon ignores all of those rules and is able to act as an effectively infinite ammo flamethrower with full mobility and no ammo penalty whatsoever. And so for the vast majority of difficulties in the game, it just amounts to, oh, I can just group up all the enemies in this area and burn them all down in a matter of seconds. And it's such a fire and forget weapon, simply fire and forget, it took no skill, because you can just simply apply damage over times to every single thing and then go about your merry day doing something else while everything else dies. For whatever reason, this staff also has perfect synergies because of Soul Blaze with tons and tons of Psyker talents. Right, there are Psyker talents under Warp Siphon that specifically give you Warp Siphon charges when you get a kill with Soul Blaze. Guess which weapon in the game is the most effective at spreading Soul Blaze? The best weapon in the game. Guess which weapon also can pick up additional crit chance with Soul Blaze and regenerate toughness over time? This weapon. Guess which weapon for some reason can crit and generate you the benefit of metal and get you get you regeneration from critting? This weapon. Guess which weapon can generate crit and therefore get empathic evasion to trigger, which makes you immune to range damage for 1 second, and it repeatedly crits over and over because the thing is hitting like 9 times a second? It's the Purgatus Staff, guys. It's this weapon. So this weapon is at once an offensive and defensive powerhouse, and the most irritating thing about it is that it doesn't really require a very high modicum of skill to use. I've gone on record at this point saying that I don't have any problem with weapons in the game, especially like melee weapons, having high potential damage results. You know, with certain builds that are like Hive Scum melee builds that are extremely high risk, high reward. You're getting in there, you're seriously juicing and pumping. But this sort of playstyle is super uninteractive. As I said at the beginning, you literally disable all ranged enemies from shooting you at all. Half of melee enemies are staggered by just left-clicking spamming with this weapon, and the only enemies that threaten you in any way, shape, or form are, of course, like crushers and metal enemies and bosses that aren't staggered. It does have kind of middling damage against those, but of course, you've got tons of other teammates who can easily focus on these targets and kill them once everything else has been melted and turned into Soul Blaze ash. So yeah, as if I need to rant about it anymore, this weapon is completely comically overtuned, and I think that the Psyker would be better for it if we could give power to every other staff and then just nerf this one down. Have Psykers play with anything else for any amount of time, and I promise you, like, it would be such a more exciting, a more well-rounded experience. And also give them a couple of stats while we're at it. I'm not done with the Who Balanced This tier, by the way. I'm certain that those of you who know are in the know are also going to put it up there. We'll talk about this, our lovely shot pistol and shield. This is a fine backup for Arbites. The weapon is unique in that it has a shield for a range weapon. Quite cool, right? Arbites gets a ton of benefits in his talent tree from blocking, and being able to block with your range weapon means you can free up your melee weapon to not have the shield, so you can encroach on enemies' entrenched positions while you are wielding your ranged weapon. You can aim over it and you can shoot them. This thing has a pretty high stagger potential too, and a good amount of killing potential. You now have, I forget what the blessing is called, but while you're aiming down the sights, you can stack up to 40% additional power, which is quite good. That's usually the blessing, one of the blessings that I choose. And yeah, the limiting factors here: super slow reload speed, can't reload while blocking, which I think that makes sense, right? And of course, the ammo capacity is very low. But the utility of just the shield, even if you were completely out of ammo, is honestly quite valuable. It is quite a good thing to have a shield somewhere slotted in your build. Now, I'll give a quick sort of summary of the double-barrel shotgun here. The double-barreled shotgun is, I'm going to say at this point, a fine waste of ammo. Unfortunate that the combat shotguns kind of leapfrogged this thing. At some point, the combat shotguns were down here, and this guy was up here, but the double-barrel just... It doesn't really have any selling points at this point. Because of its incredible, like, inability to deal with anything armored, and the fact that, like, you know, there's tons and tons of weapons that can do what it does, which is just killing a target that's 1 inch from you. Like, you could just keep meleeing effectively and do what this weapon does at this point. It doesn't have any ability to kill things at beyond a immediate range. The one role this weapon still fills is the ability to quickly swap to it and snap off a shot, say with like a weapon specialist build on the veteran, or you could do hive scum as well. But the inability to guarantee the kill with that shot because of the poor accuracy and the huge damage fall off here really sucks. And so for those two positions, or for those two you know, sort of builds, I would just recommend running something like Revolver instead, right? This weapon has the same sort of reload necessity, where like reloading a single bullet is very, very valuable. Takes a long time to do normally, so you can get a guaranteed bullet that will guaranteed kill whatever you take a millisecond aim at, versus this weapon, which may or may not do that. And this weapon can armor penetrate and go at long range, and this one can't. I think that there should be an extra special carve out made for weapons that have these sort of self-imposed limitations, right? I'm specifically talking about the double-barreled shotgun and the Ripper guns, which I think are probably the two most like hugely gimped weapons in the game in terms of their range of efficacy. These weapons trade off so much damage potential to have a short range. They should be getting compensated for this in some way, and yet I really just don't feel like they are, right? When you expect to see a super shotgun, right? These are shotguns. This is the Doom super shotgun. Where's the super, right? This should be the ability that this thing should have in terms of dealing damage, because its range is omega nerfed, especially compared to what these weapons are able to do in terms of range and precision now. It should be compensated for that in a big way. Same with the Ripper guns here, right? When you're talking about these big, heavy caliber shotguns, we should have high damage because their accuracy sucks, and we're just not getting either. So I don't necessarily know what you would do to the double-barrel shotgun. It doesn't make any sense to be able to like cleave armor or whatever it is, but it would be very cool if, for instance, this gun could impact and stagger any target, like a crusher. Shooting a crusher in his armor would stagger him, regardless of whether or not it does damage or something like that. I don't know. Just some ideas, some food for thought. A very fun weapon. I like playing with it. It's just that I don't think it'll generate very much potential effect out of it at this point playing with it, and it just doesn't serve very well in the role of a good backup weapon. Now, let's talk about the needle pistols. Fucking hell. This one is the broken one, right? I mean, both of them are pretty broken. It doesn't really matter. I think this is the Mark II. Either way, the needle pistol's stupid. The needle pistols is just gonzo bananas broken. The toxin is such a crazy status effect. It stacks to 30. It has 0.9 damage effectiveness versus Carapace, meaning it literally almost doesn't even care that Carapace exists at all. This weapon has pinpoint precision when you're standing still and aiming with it. It has infinite ammo because it's hive scum and you can use pickpocket. It can synergize with tons of stuff on the class, and one of them, I believe it's this one, the Mark II, can spread toxin to nearby enemies when they die. if you were trying to figure out like which one you should be using, it's that one, because that blue, when you swap to the blue mode and it's able to spread that toxin to nearby enemies and therefore also is able to clear hordes, is bananas. You can literally out DPS anybody else in your team, barring like maybe one of the other users of these two power weapons here, by just running a support scum who goes in and just shoots Tox Pistol at everything. You'll top the charts in terms of boss damage easily, because all you have to do is shoot the boss 5 times, 6 times, and then shoot him 1 time every couple of seconds. He ticks for thousands of damage, right? You'll deal half of a boss's damage with Tox Pistol with 0 additional effort. Just shoot him a couple times, let him rip. Shoot every crusher 2 times, they're dead. Shoot your blue version into the hordes and watch them all explode. Yeah, just like, I understand what they're going for here. And I understand that the limiting factor is supposed to be that there is limited ammo available, but pickpocket exists. And so then we have a problem there. And the damage over time effects in this game are always going to be like omega good, because then all you got to do is like stall for time. This is just the best weapon as a sidearm for any non-ranged Hive Scum build, because it's so much effective damage added to your build. Hey, you don't have a perfect counter to crushers? It's okay. Bring this weapon, shoot them 3 times, they're dead. Shoot the bulwark 2 times while their shield is while they're not aware and their shield isn't up. He's dead. Right? Shoot any other enemy in the game. Shoot a gunner, a plasma gunner, I don't think a mauler dies in 1. A mauler dies in 2 though. But like every special dies in 1 shot to this. No recoil, right? No fuss. They're dead to the damage over time effect. Does insane boss damage, can horde clear, whatever else it is. So yeah, stupid weapon. I don't exactly know what they would do to balance it. Probably make it just not get any ammo back from pickpocket or something like that. But yeah, ridiculous that this weapon can solo carry the entire class. Oh, and of course, this weapon also has stripped down. This weapon is so good that it has 0 blessings that buff its damage in any way, shape, or form, and it is still in the Who Balanced This tier, because this weapon can run Strip Down as one of its blessings, and then you can sprint around while you have this weapon out, and because Hive Scum regenerates stamina so quickly, you can run and sprint while you have above 50% stamina, and then slide, and you'll regenerate your stamina while you're sliding. And so you can just be invincible to range attacks while you're sprinting around with this gun. So it's not only a DPS, boss killing, special sniping, carapace removing powerhouse, but it also is utility to run through lines of fire and get yourself to safe positions. So disgusting weapon. Who balanced it? I don't know. I would guess the lowest paid intern. And let's move on to our last weapon, Shredder Auto Pistol. Who balanced this tier? Best weapon in the game. Thanks for watching, guys. Good night, everybody. Okay, all right, you got me. Shredder Auto Pistol. It's a pretty good weapon in some facets. I will give it a fine backup tier. It's a fine backup. It is a little bit of a waste of ammo at times, but you know what? I have seen some positivity with it on the Arbites, on Zealots, right? These classes that primarily are focused around meleeing and really don't need a whole lot in terms of the range weapon. The Shredder Auto Pistol is quite good for them. They can be mobile, and this ability, or this weapon, has the ability to regenerate your toughness for you, which is kinda cool. Being able to just shoot some bullets and get your toughness back for free is pretty sick. So yeah, it's called Inspiring Barrage, right? So Inspiring Barrage is one of the best reasons to use this. The other reason to use this is this weapon has crazy stagger potential, and this is what I was alluding to way earlier when I was talking about the other weapon that just makes the braced auto guns irrelevant. Yeah, it's the Shredder Auto Pistol. The Shredder Auto Pistol is better braced auto gun at this point, because not only does it have better movement speed, it has better accuracy, it has better DPS, it has better stagger potential, it has better crit potential, what have you. And this weapon actually fucks on the Hive Scum too, because he can reload it super fast and he can shoot all the bullets and he has infinite ammo. And it's also honestly like not that ammo hungry to boot. But most of the time it's just going to be utility, a nice little side utility that you can pull out in a similar vein to the Ogren's grenade gauntlet there, where it's like, yeah, you can regenerate your toughness with this in a pinch, and you can also use it to dispatch annoying trappers and such like that. I would not ever use as a main weapon, but it's very capable in the right hands of being a fine backup. So yeah, there you go. That is the tier list overall. Tell me what you think in the comments, guys. I think I'm feeling pretty confident about the stuff I put in trash. And when I say things are down here, trust me, I want the best for these weapons, right? I'm not gloating over the fact that stuff is down here and sucks, except for the Vigilant autoguns and the Ripper guns. I've always, and the actually pretty much almost all these except for the Braced autoguns I hate, so they can stay on there forever. But yeah, my hope, my wish for the game is that everything will end up here. And if you look at it, in my opinion, most things are up here. They're either very usable as a sidearm for a melee main character, or they are good enough to be the big banana themselves, to run the show. The only other problem that I have is the weapons that are king upon the mountain, the weapons that are just completely comically overstated in terms of the damage they can put out here. They're just too easy to produce some really insane numbers with for very little resource requirement and very little time requirement. And then one final thing that I'm worried about for the overall range balance of the game is this down here, the good on Hive Scum only thing, and just Hive Scum in general. You know, Hive Scum is borderline able to make braced autoguns okay, right? He can borderline make some of these weapons, the bullet weapons of the world, a lot better, because that's what he has access to. He can make the Shredder auto pistol into like a top tier build because of some of his synergies and having an infinite ammo, of course. But what do you do for those guns? Because like if you buff infantry autoguns for everybody else, because they're no good on anybody else really, if you buff them for everybody else, you know, what does that do for Hive Scum? Does it ascend to like god status because he gets to double the mileage? That's a difficult question. I think that maybe what I would do if I was in their case is you could just provide all of these guns, just double the ammo reserves. If they had double the ammo reserves, then the Hive Scum's infinite ammo for them wouldn't necessarily generate him any extra power, but everybody else would get a lot more mileage out of these things because that tends to be their limiting factor. So maybe that's something that Fat Shark will look into this year. Time remains to tell, and I certainly hope we get lots of other juicy weapons to add to this list this year. Anyway, guys, thanks for watching. No fake outs this time. Love you very much. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.